B'chazi Hashem, it's absolutely wonderful to be back with all of you. It's an incredible, incredible journey to Eretz Yisrael. And Baruch Hashem, the sunlight of redemption is rising, and it's rising, and it's speeding up. And Baruch Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is descending on Har Sinai of Pnimius HaTorah, and there's an infusion that's taking place of godliness and soulfulness. That's a response to the bikush and the search that so many Yidden all around the world are feeling for a Yiddishkeit that's bursting with meaning, real consciousness, intentionality. Ashrenu that we're a part of it. And like I said, Klape, where this is going, we're just the pioneers. We get to be, Hashem gave us a schus, we have our foot in the door early, but Bezras Hashem, this kind of approach will reach the whole world. B'siyata d'shmaya. So let's jump into it. We are currently holding on Daf Beis and Aleph in the middle of Torah Beis, and very, very, very quickly we have been learning about Tefillah, and we've been learning about Tefillah and its connection to Mashiach, and we're learning that the Tefillah, that's connection to Mashiach, is an aspect of Reach, is an aspect of this concept of the Pardaska, of the nose, that's drawing down a very, very, very deep, very lofty kind of spiritual expression that we can only use, our limited kalim words to talk about, but it comes from that place of keser, which is associated with yearning and will and motivation. And in order to have this kind of tefillah, which is the weapon of Mashiach, said Rebbe Nachman, it has to come through the aspect of Shmir Sabris. That's the aspect of Yosef HaTzadik, and Yosef HaTzadik was Mekabel, therefore Pishnayim, because he guarded the bris in relation to Eshes Potifar, and therefore he was Mekabel from his father Pishnayim. Pishnayim is connected to the concept of a cherev, because the pasuk says cherev pifiyos biyadai. So we have a double-edged sword, and Pishnayim literally is mamish tefillah, and it has two piyos. There's the bchina of shivcha shel makom and the concept of sheilas tzarcham. Two aspects of tefillah. That's the Pishnayim that's connected to the cherev, that itself is connected to tefillah because of Yaakov Avinu v'charbi v'kashdi, where there's a reference to, according to the Targum Unklis, b'tzloisi v'usi, his tefillah and his bakasha, and that's the weapon of Mashiach. That's the weapon of tefillah. Says Rebbe Nachman, a person who's zeicha to that needs to be mekabel this concept of tefillah through the aspect of mishpat, which is itself why it's Yaakov Avinu says b'charbi v'kashti, because Yaakov Avinu is the bechina of mishpat, where it says ki chayk li Yisrael hu mishpat l'kei Yaakov. Chayk is a bechina of bris, chayk b'she'er sam. And in order for a person to properly engage with the bris-oriented tefillah of Yosef HaTzadik, Ki chayk li Yisrael hu, it has to come through mishpat l'kei Yaakov, and that's the bechina b'chal kol devarav b'mishpat. A person's words have to be mechuvan b'mishpat. The way that we touched that and understood it is that it shouldn't go too much to one side or to the other. It has to be the perfect balance between or and kli. That has to be the perfect synthesis between a person's bechira and the recognition of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Yediyah, and that's the whole Yiddishkeit comes down to that synthesis. We're B'nai Yaakov, not just B'nai Avram alone, and not just B'nai Yitzchak alone, but we're B'nai Yaakov. Yaakov is the aspect of synthesis. In order to bring that mishpat into a person's life, says the Rebbe, you have to give tzedakah. Tzedakah before davening, dafka, that's why it's brought in Shulchan Aruch, that tzedakah is to be given before davening, because if we do that, it anchors us in this place of mishpat. And Rebbe brought Ramazim about that. I'm just giving a very brief overview, because some of us, at least, we haven't been in the Torah for a week. Then the Rebbe said that in order to avoid the aspect of machshavos zaros, mishpat also works for that, because the pasuk says ki hashoichad yaver einei chachamim. Einei chachamim was a concept of two places in the Torah we see a reference to the word ayin, ein mishpat and ein Yaakov, which according to the Rebbe's mamish hainuach, right, ein Yaakov, ein mishpat, because mishpat utstaka be Yaakov asisa. Yaakov is connected to this aspect of mishpat, and that's the bechina of yaver einei chachamim. That's the bechina of Ananin de Mechasan al Einin, which in the Zohar Kadosh are attributed to Esav and Yishmael, which are the two clouds that cover the eyes. Why Esav and Yishmael? Because Esav is the klipa of too much chesed, which we said is too much yediyah. So everything's HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I don't need to daven because just let it be. And the aspect of the klipa of Esav is the klipa of Gevura, right? Where it's, mamish, I'm the one who's davening. It's all in my hands. No such thing. We're going to see that theme show up again and again as we go through the Torah Be'ezras Hashem and complete it Be'ezras Hashem today. Then the Rebbe said that in order, and then ultimately when we get out of Galus, so that's what the pasuk says, Tzion b'mishpat tipadeh, and because Tzion will be redeemed through mishpat. So then, of course, the pasuk says, "Ki ayin ba'ayin yiru." Ayin ba'ayin is the Ein Yaakov, Ein Mishpat that are clarified now that these clouds have gone, and we're going to be living with a perfect synthesis of realizing both Hashem Hu Elikim, both. Right, that there's a Bechina of Elikim, where we're living within this realm, and we make choices, and it flows down through us, but ultimately it's all coming from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the perfect balance, and that's the secret of Mashiach, and that's the secret of Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben David, the spiritual, the physical, the R and the Kli coming into perfect integration. That's the aspect of Mashiach that we've been waiting thousands and thousands of years for our neshamas to come down at this mamish ultimate moment in history, where we're zocha to be talking this language and figuring that, you have to put these two things together, and that's the ultimate R and the ultimate balance and the ultimate stability that all of us are looking for, is R and Kli in every bechina. And the Rebbe said that in order to make sure also that our tefillas have the aspect of perfect shmir sabris, you have to bind it to a tzaddik. What's a tzaddik? Mandanat abrisa. The tzaddik is the person, right, who embodies this aspect of shmir sabris. And how do you do that? We said in Breslov, there's a little composition, right? Or in Mikasher Atzmi L'chal Tzaddikim Shebederenu. Hereby bind myself. We say it in the beginning of davening. I say it before Baruch Sha'amar. Some say it earlier. I bind myself to all the tzaddikim Shebederenu in our generation, L'chal Tzaddikim Amitiyim, and to all the true tzaddikim Sheikhni Afar, who have passed from the world and are buried in the ground. And then we say ubefrat, right? If the people who feel particularly connected with this tzaddik, right, who's the one who's revealing all these teachings. So obviously he knew a thing or two about, the concept of bris and tzaddik and tefillah and Mashiach and so on. Ubefrat Rabbeinu HaKadosh, and so on. Tzaddik Yisrael Nachal Novei Makor Chochmah, right, which is the aspect of the Rosh Tevos of those four words, Spell Nachman, that Rebbe Nachman revealed. That's his shorish in the Torah, Rebbe Nachman Mefega, and so on. And then, like I said, you can feel free to add however many tzaddikim that you're bound to. That's also Bechin of R and Kli. It's integration, it's synthesis. We draw from different sources, and that's the R of our time. That's the Bechin of David, Badchana de Malka, that David is called in the Zohar Kadosh the eye that reflects many different colors, because David HaMelech is the prism that all the different iris come through. And in our generation, you find it's the generation of Malaktim. Somebody said over Shabbos that you find that, really what it comes down to today is Breslov and Chabad, if we're being honest. Hill Zeitlin already wrote this, that what it comes down to in terms of Pneumius, these are the two, what's Rebbe Nachman refers, Sari Meis and Sari Alafim, him and the Balatanya, and the trajectory. And both of them called their works Likutim, right? Likutei Moharan, Likutei Moharan. Because therefore the Dar Basura, our generation is the Dar Malaktim, right? We have the privilege today of having the whole Torah, and we can filter every single tzaddik through the prism of all the other tzaddikim. This is the Dar of integration. In the words of the Arizal, this is the Dar of the Partsufim. It's not individual spheres, it's the Dar of algorithmic data clouds, but a holy cloud that enables you to see through the clouds of sheker, that are clouds of ego, that are clouds of independence, that are clouds of koichava itzim yadi, that are clouds kabbalistically of ana emlech, right, where every person says, I'm good enough on my own. No such thing. We all need each other. That's the Bechina Partsufim. Okay, and that's our Dar. Then he said, this is reflected in the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu himself puts up the Mishkan, right? Because that's the aspect of the fact that we're bringing all of our tefillas to the tzaddik, and we are making the contribution. That's the Bechina of Klape in relation to our avodah of Bechira, because it's our prayers, but the idea of it is that we can't even put it up. The tzaddik, Klape us, because everything is relative, is the aspect of Yediyah. But it's both. We're contributing, Moshe Rabbeinu is putting up. Then Moshe Rabbeinu B'chavodah Ba'atzmai also has this in relation to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Like I said from the Medrash Tanchuma, that Moshe Rabbeinu is the one who's ostensibly putting up the Mishkan, but the Medrash says, like I mentioned, I'm just doing a review, that Moshe Rabbeinu said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you know that I can't put up the Mishkan, I can't either do it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, you're right, you pretend to do it, right? You make the motions, and I'll be the one who's putting it up. And that's also this perfect blend between this is really called Emunah, where a person doesn't just sit in bed and say, Al Tzazevishter, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants that we should do things. But while you're doing things, you have to recognize, mamish, this whole thing is, it's all elokus, and that's the ultimate tikkun. Then the Rebbe threw in, and that's where we're up to, this very interesting piece, where again, because we've been learning about Yaakov and Yosef, and that's an extension of Torah Aleph, which was also speaking about Yaakov and Yosef Kechad Chashive, and over here, the Rebbe says that there's a connection between Torah and Tefillah. Just like in Torah Aleph, we learned that there's a connection between Torah and Tefillah, because through the Torah that a person learns, b'kayach, b'chavchas itim, a person finds Torah in everything, to find the seichel sheish b'chal davar, through that is Tefillah sarniskabel. In Torah Beis also there's a symbiotic relationship between Torah and Tefillah. What's the symbiotic relationship between Torah and Tefillah in Torah Beis? The Rebbe says that every Torah that you learn, again, it's very difficult to know what this means. We're just learning words, but the words bring down hasagas like into the makif of our brain. We don't really understand what these things mean, mamish, but the Rebbe is filtering down messages from a different realm, from a different place. Remember, he said Likutei Moharan is the lowest form that he could get these ideas. Where he was massing them, our brains can't understand it. But he's filtering them down through different words and different concepts. The same was true for the Baal Shem, same was true for the Hari, same was true for Rashbi. It's coming from a different realm. We just use the words. We don't know what we're talking about, but we use words, right? And it's helpful, for us in our reality, in Gufim, in bodies. But the Rebbe says that the Torah is only tzotzei neshamas. The Torah that we learn, mamash, what we're learning now, is sparks of souls. And those souls enter into our tefillah, and they're nischadshim sham, they are renewed there. And then when we bring our tefillah, which is malbish our Torah, so there's the Torah comes into tefillah, and again, we don't have time now. We're not going to be Ian, but that means that every person should reflect on that. What might that mean outside of the words, right? That our Torah comes into tefillah to be in a slabish. Rebbe Nachman has a whole huge sugya of Nasan Likutei Halachas Hilchos Reish Chodesh. We learned with some of the chevra, right, to turn Torah into tefillah, right? That's mamish. The earliest root of that is here. Right? With all of that bechina, what does that mean? To make Torah real. Not just to learn it in a book, an abstraction, but to bring it down into your prayer, right? It's nischadisham. Your Torah becomes alive when it comes into prayer. To say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I don't just want to learn your Torah, I want to daven it. I want to mamish daven it because I want you. I want to get close to you. So this is the earliest route. And again, it requires this fineness. We're going speedy like an express train because we want to just go through. But it's important to take the time and to be misbainin on all of this. Says the Rebbe, that's a bechina of besulais acharei reisam v'vaislach, right, where they are brought to the tzaddik, and that's the bechina besulais acharei reisam. It's the letters of Torah that are enclosed within the tefillah that are brought to the tzaddik, and the tzaddik is putting them up. Now we begin where we were up to, with a pirish on the Gemara in Rabba Bar Chana. Like we said, the first 16 Torahs are a pirish on the Agadas of Rabba Bar Chana. Let's do the Gemara inside first. So you take a look on the side. Yeah, you should have it over there. Baba Basra, Ayin Gimmel Amud Beis. Amar Rabba Bar Chana. This is where Rabba Bar Chana said, Zimna Chada Hava Kazlina Besvinta. One time we were traveling by ship on a boat. Bechazina Nahu Kavra. And we saw a big, huge fish. And I use the word hahu, like it's like a specific fish. Hahu kavra. It's like, there's that fish. They saw that fish there. And I guess it was sitting in a particular place for such a long time. It started like there were reeds growing on it. There was sand that had accumulated. And there was like a whole garden, whatever, like mamish, like an island. A whole, what's it called? Reeds, plants. So he says, "I'm reading Abeshtuhu." We thought it was an island. We thought it was land. So we get off the boat, and we started making a whole barbecue on this island. And it wasn't an island. It felt something. You know how deep this is. I could speak now for the next hour just on this without Rebbe Nachman. You know how deep this is. We thought it was dead, and it was mamish alive. We were cooking and going about our merry business. It was alive. You think this earth is dead? You think anything that you interact with is dead? This is dead? Everything's alive. Everything's mamish alive. It was alive. It got cham. It got hot. It reacted. Gabe is hapech, and it turned over. The whole, you imagine that? A whole island just flipping over, turning over. It didn't like the barbecue. It was burning him. So he says, if we weren't close to the ship, we would have all drowned. Says the Rashbam, there was sand that was accumulating on its back, right, and there was growing grasses on the sand. We thought it was an island. Says the Heilige Rebbe, listen to how the whole Torah Beis is in this. Inhale it. You can inhale Torah Beis. It's mamish like you can breathe it in. Breathe it in. It's the R of the Geulah. Breathe it in deep in your lungs. It's the R of the Geulah. Ruach HaPeinu. Ma'amish Ruach HaPeinu, Mashiach Hashem. The sefer is Mashiach. The sefer is Messianic. These are Mashiach concepts that are filtering down into our reality from a different world. Says the Rebbe, in this galus HaKadosh Baruch Hu is flipped around. He's hiding his face. You see nifal, you've hid your face from me. That the face is always rachamim. You turn toward a person, you look them in the eyes. It's expressive. That's compassion. That's mercy. A person turns their back on you. Din. And the whole galus is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has turned his back on us. Panu alai oirev. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is responding to the fact that we turned our back to him, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu turned his back to us. All of our tefillas and our dar of the past year and a half is about this. HaKadosh Baruch Hu start to panecha. Yisi nival, October 7th. Hundreds and hundreds of almanas, Yisayimim, young people. Mazeh, ma'ai. We want HaKadosh Baruch Hu to turn his face, to turn around, to look at us, that we should see him. Turn to me. Yar Hashem Panav. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, shine toward us the light of your face. Says the Rebbe, when we see how long the galus is. And every day we're screaming to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the whole tefillah, Binah Yerushalayim, we're davening the Einan Hashem, we're not being answered. And it's so incredibly reasonable for a person to feel that tefillah doesn't work. You know how many people I speak to have been davening for a certain thing for years and years, and they say tefillah doesn't work, I don't believe in tefillah anymore. And it's reasonable. There's how long can a person request, especially if we think about HaKadosh Baruch Hu as our Avinu Avarachamam, and so on, and a person's davening and davening and davening, and nothing happens. And we make the mistake that the tefillas are lyric. Says Rebbe Nachman, but you don't understand. You don't understand. The whole world doesn't revolve around me. The whole world doesn't revolve around you. You are a data point in an algorithm called Knesset Yisrael. And the way that tefillah works is not that you send up a tefillah and it gets answered in your life. Remember we learned from Keser Shem Tov the Baal Shem? Every request gets answered. In some bechina. Because what's actually happening is that every tefillah that goes up, says the Rebbe, Avo be'emes kol ha-tefillas, ha-tzadikim shebachol dar v'dar heimalin oisam u'mekimim oisam. Every tefillah you put up, it's like an assist in basketball. Somebody else jumps up and dunks it. The tzaddik is mamish reaching out and be mekabel that tefillah and lovingly putting it up as a panel of the Mishkan, Ila'ah. Right? It's there. There's Yerushalayim up there. There's a Beis HaMikdash up there. The tefillas are being answered, but it's a process, not an event. It's a process. And the same is true microcosmically in each one of our lives. Sometimes you daven for something and it's not, and it doesn't even make sense because nothing seems to be happening, and then pitom, boom, everything changes. I felt that here in London. All of a sudden, there are certain individuals here in the room, you know who you are. I've been waiting for you for 2.5 years. And I'm pushing and pushing and pushing and davening and davening and davening and hoping that something will happen here and that people will start to understand that I'm trying to do a thing and that there's tzaddikim in the world and that there's true avodah and that like we're in kindergarten, Klapi, where we need to be in terms of our avodas Hashem and our sagas and so on. And then pitom, it's not even, and then it just happens. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends people who really take achrayus and invest themselves in a chabura and get involved and it's a different world. It's a different world. So I just felt that in my own life. But it's true for all of us. The tzaddikim shebachal dar v'dar hein malin oisam u'mekimim oisam. The tzaddikim are putting the tefillas up. Kamashikasav va'yakam Moshe es hamishkan. You know what the sefer tevis of va'yakam Moshe es hamishkan are? Sefer tevis. It's not in order, so I'll save us time. Hamtein. Hamtein means, we're going to learn it in Torah Vav. Patience. Va'yakam Moshe es hamishkan. Hamtein. Takes time. It's also Oisias Matana. Matana, because we think Moshe Rabbeinu thinks he's the one putting it up. It's a matana. It's all a matana. And it's hamtein. You got to go slow. Every single word counts. Every single tefillah matters. Every single little expression of yearning is used. They're putting every panel up in its appropriate, proper place. They're building the Shechina. It's a koim of the Shechina. And that's part of the Messianic revelation, is that it's all of us. It's not any one individual. It could be the biggest Gadol Adar. Without us, it's klum. It's the whole Klal Yisrael, all the different lights, all the different components, all the different approaches infused with panemias. It's all of us. And that was the Shabbos that we just had. You know, I don't know, the Chaver know a little bit. We had I went for a conference where they brought in 40 Rabbanim from 6 countries who are all teaching this. If they're not teaching Mamash Likutei Moharan, but their hearts are on fire with the same R. You know, everybody talks about Achdus today because you put a couple of Jews who dress differently from each other in one room and they don't kill each other, and we call that Achdus because like they tolerated being in the same place for a half hour, you know? That's not Achdus. Achdus means when there's such an echad us, meaning the pnimius, everybody who's gathered together is mamish one in such a pnimi way that the outsides pashut don't matter, and if they do matter, it's because we recognize that we need all the different external kalim to reveal this one energy. I've been to different rabbinical conferences, usually marked by 2 things. Number 1, ego and kavod, and everybody's trying to push everybody else out of the way so that they can speak and this and who's going to be the keynote and everything. And number 2, kvetching and despair and how terrible the dar is and how we can't reach them and what are we going to do and, you know, etc., etc. I promise you, and I didn't know this behechach that it would be this way, and I was mamish davening that it wouldn't be shattered and broken and come back a baldimian, having dreamed and imagined that something could be different and it wasn't different. I promise you. And there are people who are on this call now, I'm seeing the names who were there and they could attest to this. This conference was marked by 2 things. Number 1, anivus anitis. People who were tripping over themselves to get out of the way for everybody else. True anivus, true bittul. No, bittul means people who aren't people. People who live for kutshabrichu shchinte. And it was the most optimistic gathering I've ever been to. It wasn't a question of like, how are we gonna, you know, it's like, chevra, higanu, like, zeo, we have it. We know what it takes. Now we have to go through the process of figuring out collaboratively and infrastructurally and institutionally, how do we get this to every single Jew? But it's not a question. We're standing on the threshold of Geulah. We've made it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has filtered down through Jewish history the Chameshes Echidei Adaros, these tzaddikim, Rashbi, you know, the Hari, the Baal Shem, and all the different streams of panemius that are coming out of these different, you know, fundamental channels and then spreads. Naru Pashte. To redeem our people with a consciousness of collaboration, with a consciousness of the Ari, which is the in and of parts of, like I mentioned earlier, where it's different parts, you know, parts of his parts, oof. You know, it's parts that fly. It's not a part that just stays where it is. A parts of all the parts get together and they become an integrated group, you know, consciousness, something else. And so over there, mamish, it was this Geulah because there were certain, I'm not going to mention which, but there was a certain group of Rabbanim there who come from a very hyper-specific background that don't usually interact with, you know, groups that are outside of them, and they dress a very specific way, and it's very culture-oriented. And to see the way that they recognized that they thought that the Geulah was coming through them. And it turns out that the Geulah is coming through all of us. And they are a part of it. And so is Breslev. And so is it was somebody there who was like not even into Chassidus B'chlal. He teaches Lashem. That's his thing. There was a Gra represented group. And they're Datilu Michever Rav Kook. And it's all one tapestry. That's the art of the Geulah. Echad us, mamish. Ahava us. Echad us. Das is. This is it. So he says this is what's happening. They're building the koima of the Shechina ma'at ad sheyishtalim shir kaimasa until it's completed. Az yava Mashiach, and then Mashiach will come. The Moshe, which is the aspect of Moshe. But be yashlim oisav yakom oisav b'shleimus. So here's a first source that Mashiach is not the beginning of the process, but the very end of the process. But the process of Mashiach started according to the Malbim the first second that the last Jewish child stepped over the threshold of Eretz Yisrael to go into Galus. Says the Malbim, the minute Geulah started, the light of the Geulah began to shine in the world. It's a process. So this is Pshat in the Pasuk, Chazin L'hai Kavra. Chazin L'hai Kavra, we saw a fish. Says the tzaddik, you know what a fish is? Bechinas tzaddik adar. The tzaddik is called a fish. I have time to go now into the pinimis of why tzaddik is called a fish. It has to do with the fact that tzaddik is connected to Yesod. Yesod is, it's called Zivuga B'Tadira. They're getting into that now. It's called a dog. But in the context of our Torah, if you remember, the Rebbe said that Yosef tzaddik was zeicha through Shmir Sabris to the tefillah of the Pardaska. And the Rebbe said the Pardaska is gematria, remember? Ben Pyras. Yosef, what's Pyras? Is the miluyim of Shem Havaya and Shem Ekya. How many miluyim expanded forms were there of the Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei? Do you remember? 4. How many miluyim were there of the Shem Ekya? 3. Good. Doug. Daled Gimmel. 4 and 3. The 4 miluyim of Yud Kei Vav Kei. The 3 miluyim of Ekya. Daled is 4. Gimmel is 3. Gematria. Pyras, Gematria, Pardaska. This is the tzaddik who's Shaimer Abris. Has been Pyras Yosef. So that's a remez. Daled and Gimmel. Zabechinas Moshe Mashiach. This is the aspect of Moshe Mashiach. So he says, we saw the fish. Tiyasev leichal tagabei. Hainu atfilas. Shonim espalav al zeh shekviyachol paina e'ayr feilenu. Our whole davening is the Yasev leichal tagabei, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu turn His face from us. There's sand growing on it. Hana Ayrev Yasvale Hainavi Avina Nes HaMishkan Al Moshe. They brought the tefillas Yasvale. They brought the tefillas to him. Called Kitzarach Lahavi L'Kashar Satfila Tzaddik Shabadar. So Hai Kavra, this fish, which is the tzaddik, has a job, and the job is to respond to the fact that Yasvale Chal Tagabe, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has turned His face from us, and Yasvale, we bring all of our tefillas that are about the Yasvale Chal Tagabe, we bring it to the tzaddik, and Mekat Chali Agma. And in those tefillas are neshamas. Neshamas habayim im tefillas. Neshamas are called plants, are called reeds, seedlings. Bechinas besulas hacharei. That these words of Torah are wrapped up into the tefillah. Neshamas im nekram hasaves. Neshamas are called plants, grasses. Kameshikasav revava kitzamach hasadan esatich. I have placed you like the growings and the sproutings of the field. And that's a reference to Klal Yisrael. So our neshamas are the bechina of reeds, and that's what it means. There were reeds growing on them, meaning because whatever tefillah we brought were filled with words of Torah, letters of Torah, which are neshamas. There were neshamas there.
Yeah. Explain why chalta sand is tefillas.
No. It could be. Yeah, but he doesn't make reference to that specifically here. That's already expanded. His main thing is agabe. Right, meaning that sand had accumulated on the fact that it was flipped over, right? That it was turned around from us, and that's the remez that the Rebbe is using for tefillah. That all of our tefillahs are in response to this, the chal ta'agabe, right? That HaKadosh Baruch Hu is turned backwards, and therefore there are things that are accumulating that seem to be getting in the way between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'savrina yabeshta, and we thought that it was yabeshta. Hanamat tefillas eina sefer. We thought that tefillah doesn't work. We thought that our avodah is useless. We thought that there's no point. Yabeshtahi, we thought it's dry. But it's not true. They're salkinan. They rise up. The more that we daven, don't you understand that the Geulah is a process, and the more that Klal Yisrael davens, each and every tefillah causes for the sunrise of that redemption, for this irusa de lasata, for the Gili Shechina, for the hechinas atzma lezivuk, that the Shechina is preparing itself to be intimate with Kudsha Baruch Hu, that we're waiting for Kudsha Baruch Hu to reveal Himself in our reality. To mak kasher to cooking and baking. Says the Rebbe, what do you mean cooking and baking? Cooking and baking, you want to eat, you have to prepare the food. And eating is b'china zivug. Eating is connected to zivug. It says that Yosef made a reference to Eshes Potifar, that I can't be intimate with her because he's the bread. He gave me everything, but he withheld the lechem. Says the Rebbe, lechem is zivug? Good. So you know what pashinan afinan is? You know what cooking and baking is? Preparation for zivug. The tefillas were going up, salkinan, va'afinan ubashlinan, and they were getting the food ready. You know, Erev Shabbos, you walk into the home, you smell the food. Do you understand that we're now in Erev Shabbos? Do you understand that? Do you understand that we're in a couple of decades away? Like, this is it! We need to wake up. Baruch haba. Mashiach is da. The Ar of Eliyahu Hanavi is already shining in the world. The Mavaser Taiv is shining in the world. And it's not Eliyahu Hanavi that's one person. This whole gathering was an Eliyahu Hanavi gathering. There are people who are activated. There are people who are seeing it, who are living it. We're already shouting it to the world. Hine. Mamash, Higia Zman Geulah. We're here. We've really arrived. We've really arrived. You can smell already the food of Shabbos Kodesh. That's the Reach. That's the Reach. You can smell it. We're so close. We're so close. Yeah.
I was just thinking a few visual besides the point of lechem, but the whole point of cooking is the union of zivug between the nefesh and the guf. The gashmis needs food.
Yes, to survive. Sure. That's the depth of achila. That's the depth of achila itself. Is as if you take a look in Nefesh Chaim, Beis, where the Nefesh Chaim is talking about tefillah, and tefillah is mamish b'china of food, because when we daven, we're binding HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who is the neshama of the world, down into the guf of the world, and that's the integration also. Again, Avidia Bechira, R and Kalim, it's all one thing. One thing. Okay, I'm sorry. We've so much to cover. I want to hear it. But we also have to get through it. Okay, so let's afterwards, and that's why we have that group. By the way, we want everyone to share the chidushim, everyone to share, but just we're so limited with time. And then when the Shechina is completely finished, when we're davening and davening, then finally the rachamim will be completed, and the whole thing will flip over. So when it got hot, and when the rachamim of Kodesh Baruch Hu was heated up, boom, it'll just happen. That mashal that had been given to people, the painter who paints the painting upside down, all right, and it looks like nothing's happening, and then in one fell swoop, he just flips the painting over, and then you're like, oh my gosh, it's the Statue of Liberty. I could never have seen it, or it's whatever he was painting, Winston Churchill face. And you see it. You never could have seen it. So what? He wasn't painting it, he was painting it, but just you didn't see it. It was a process that was taking place, and then whoop, the whole thing flips over, and pitom, yavo, right? And immediately you see it.
Process, not progress.
Exactly, it's a process. Nachon, you don't necessarily see the progress. Beautiful, excellent, wow. And he says, but don't make this mistake, because that's all the bechina of gevura. That it's really our tefillah, it's gevalt, it's our tefillah, and it's tzaddik, and we're doing it. We're doing it. He says, don't fool yourself. If you weren't close to the sfinta, you know what the sfinta is, says the Rebbe, we're going to see in a minute. Sfinta is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's chesed, that it was all from him, so it wasn't you, but it was him, but it was both, but it was us, because he is us, and we are him, and we don't really understand that at all, but you and I are sitting here, we're sparks of Elokus. We read it in the book, we don't know what the heck it means, we don't live that way. Do you know what it means? You're God. You know what that means? You have a spark of godliness inside of you. You are him, like you don't exist. You have a guf. Each and every one of us, mamish, is him. That's what it means. Mamish. We are him. He is us. But we need him and he needs us. So he says, Hainu lamani esezos. It says in the Torah, Kadosh Baruch Hu says, lamani, I did it for me. Who came before me that I should pay him schar? And the Midrash says, Mi asali mezuzah kadem shenesat li bayis. You know, so somebody says, Gevalt, I need to get schar from Hashem because I put a mezuzah on my house. Says the Kodesh Baruch Hu, sweet, who gave you a house to put a mezuzah on? You know, what did you do? You know, so, I did mitzvahs with my body. Who gave you a neshama in your body that you should do mitzvahs? It's all him. It's all him. Nimtza shekol maisim tovim shalanu v'chalat tefillas, that all of our maisim tovim and tefillas, which is the bechina of the klipa of, in a certain sense, Yishmael, too much to the side of bechira, too much to the side of gevura. Hakol mi'itai, everything was yidiyah, everything was from the side of chesed. What do you think, schar? You are the schar. You know, this is the schar. It's here. Olam haba is da. Is mamish here. Although it appears that it's through our Torah and our tefillah that the Geulah comes, don't forget, it's his chesed but we're still anachnu, but it's still his chesed, and it's both. It's the hismazgus of kli and ar, of etzem and the expression. Ein sof and ar ein sof, ratzon and bala ratzon, male and female, v'chule shebechaz yigal isanu, and that's the mishpat of Yaakov that's able to keep the perfect balance, the maskala, right? Which the Zohar says the whole thing is rooted in this maskala. If you don't have the maskala, whole system falls apart. Maskala means the balance. If we weren't close to the boat, says the Rebbe, the boat is chesed. The sapanim, the sailors, are all chasidim, right? So sapanim are connected to chesed because the boat is chesed. If we weren't close to the sapanim, which is a reflection of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's chesed, we would have drowned. And that's the perfect synthesis of consciousness that is the R of the Mashiach. And now he brings it back to the pasuk. Emar ela kohanim v'chinas tefila k'ma shekazvus Hashem ha'emarta hayom. That's what tefila is, ha'emarta, because you're declaring that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the only one who can help you in the world. As Hashem ha'emarta. So that's Emar. El ha-kohanim b'chinas Torah b'chinas neshamas k'nis galal k'ma shekazvus k'hisusei kohen yishmur das v'Torah b'aksheo mipiyu. So the kohen is a bechin of Torah. So you have Emor El HaKohanim. That tefillah is nislabesh, the kohanim, which is the letters of the Torah, which are the nitzotzei neshamas. Aaron, Emor kind of b'nei Aaron. Aaron bechinas mishpat. Kameshikos of Nasa Aaron is mishpat b'nei Yisrael. That's the mishpat between Torah and tefillah, between Yediyah and Bechira. Between our Maisim and HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Chesed, Yitzarech Lahavi Kol HaTfilas, Lebechinas Moshe Mashiach. You have to bring it to Moshe, and which is Mashiach, V'hu Yaakov es HaMishkan, and that energy is putting up the Mishkan. V'zeh Perish Rashi Lahazar Gedolim Ala Katanim. That a person, the Gedolim, have to warn the Katanim. Hainu Atzadik Hadar, Shu Bechinas Moshe Ma'ar Gadol. Yazir could mean to warn, but it could also mean to shine. Yazir v'ya'er esatfila. Can you imagine if we took that word Yazir, that for generations meant that every gadol has to scream at children, and they just flip the meaning. It's like it doesn't actually mean you have to warn. It means you have to shine. That's a lahazir agadolim al katanim. The gedolim are supposed to shine up the katanim. And it's not about forcing them to be something else. It's just like the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Every yid is a gem. Just have to clean off the outside, right? Imagine that. He asks if we've been learning it wrong. It's like, whoops, okay. It changes our whole educational approach. Yasir v'ya'er es hatfila. Shebechinas ma'ara katan, because Torah is the ma'ara gadol. That's the bechin of the shemesh, going back to Torah Aleph. And we're going to see it in Torah Vav. And tefila is the ma'ara katan. And lahazar gedolim ala katanim. That the neshamas are shining down into the tefilas. U'lenefesh le'yitama ba'amav. And there is a reference to Shmir Sabris. Shmir Sabris kanal kamuva bazar ikrdi yitzarbish alarayin. And that's why in our dar we're all struggling with Shmir Sabris, because that's what we need to work on now. Because that's mamish what the ikra avaida is. I spoke in Eretz Yisrael Sunday night, right as I came from the conference. I've never spoken that way in my life. Mamish. It was just so like pent up energy from that Shabbos, and I must have spoke for like an hour and a half. It was mamish l'malam, as I kept on apologizing. People were like, no, keep on going. It was just mamish like, and I spoke about this. I spoke about the Indian of the struggles with Shmir Sabris, and how it's not stam. It's not happening just like, because of technology, and now we have access, and now it's terrible Yitzhara. This is part of the unfolding of the Geulah, part of the unfolding of it. So that'll be up. I have to post it. But this is the Nekudavu Ikr the Misavu. So that's the Ikr the Yitzarbish, the main Yitzhar is in that place. Okay, Yishmer Sabris. And when a person is connected to Shmir Sabris, again, it's a myriads of levels. Zayich lebchinas tefila. The person merits this kind of tefila. Zayich lebchinas tilasi achtamlach ki Ikr hareach talib tahara, because scent is taloi in tahara. Kamash Amar Rabbi Sinch Chana the Racha. The Gemara says in Saita, Misha batla tahara batla hareach. When tahara left, Reach left. Makesha reach to tefillah, to tahara, because reach is the tefillah, and tefillah needs shmir sabris. Misha batla reach batla tahara, and that's tahara shmir sabris. Kamuva ma'isa b'gemara. The Gemara over there says the next Amud and the next daf sha'amar reichidchinenusanim eriach. Right, I think it was Rabbah was carrying a date, and he wrapped it up in a cloak, and his father Rav Huna, or his father, I can't remember it now, but one of them said to the other one, he said, I smell a date. Amarle. So I think, is it true that Rav Huna was the father of Rabbah? Can't remember who was who. But Amar Le, he said to Bini, Tahar Yeshbecha. If you were able to smell that date, Tahar Yeshbecha. What's the word for date? Reicha de Chininu says all Chen. Chen is Ches and Nun. Goes back to Torah Aleph. Torah Aleph and Torah Beis, I learned for the first time because I was speaking to Chevra over Shabbos, and I was telling them, we're Mamash Licht in Torah Aleph, Torah Beis. Someone told me, and I never knew this, he said that in Breslov they're seen as an extension of each other, which makes perfect sense because it's Mamash the same inyanim. Right? Torah, Tefillah, Yaakov Yosef, right? These Reicha de Chininu says Chen. It's all connected over here. Let's make a little bit of an entrance into Torah Gimmel, and then we'll continue Be'ezras Hashem with it tomorrow. And we will catch up. It's just that today I had to give a 15-minute introduction just to get us back into it. Otherwise, it is possible, and we will be doing a full Amud Be'ezras Hashem in the allotted time. Okay. Enter into Torah Gimmel. Torah Gimmel is unique because it's much shorter, and the Rebbe begins with the Rabbi Bar Bar Chana already merosh, and he says, "Amar Rabbi Bar Bar Chana, l'didi chazal yahu akukta." Says Rabbi Bar Bar Chana, it appeared to me the frog. Hay akrukta, the frog. Look in Rashbam, akrukta is tzvardeya, and that's where the word croak comes from, by the way. Croak is a krukta. Mamish, I'm not making a joke. Croak is a crook. Crook is there's an association between frogs and croak. A crook does the frog. The chazinan gruna. He says this frog was so huge that it was as big as the city of Grunhut. I'm kidding. The Agrunya, I see two Grunhut sitting here. Gewalt. What do you know what tikkunim are making? You have no clue. It was as big as the city of the Grunhuts. It's Pile Plein. It's all secrets. Ki akada groinya. That's how big. How big was akada groinya? Akada groinya kamahavi shitin bate. It was as big as 60 houses. Asatanina bala. The snake came, the serpent, and it swallowed up the frog. Asa pushkansa. The oirev came, the raven, ubalatanina. And it swallowed it was like the kids thing with a woman who swallowed the fly, and this swallowed that, and that swallowed this. Right, a chagadi, exactly, something like that. Uslik v'yasif bilana. And that raven started flying, and it went up to the tree. Tachazi kamana fishchela di ilana. Look and see how incredibly powerful this tree is, that it's able to hold the raven, that the raven swallowed the snake, that the snake swallowed the frog, that the frog was as big as 60 batim, and chadgadia, right, chadgadia, like, look how big that thing is. So let's make just a little bit of a start, the last 2 minutes. Says the Rebbe, a person who hears nigunim from a menag in Russia, it's going to impact your avodas Hashem negatively. But if you hear music from a holy source, as I toivle, it's going to be good for you. As we will explain. Because holy music comes from the two birds. What are these birds? The Medrash says, why is the tikkun for the Mitzayra with two holy birds, pure birds? The Medrash says, come the chirpers, the birds that are chirping, and they should be mechaper on the chirper, because he chirped, right? He said lashon hara, and so in Memela he needs to have the tikkun from chirpers. Because he was blemished with his tzaras, because he blemished his voice, which is b'chin of lashon hara. Nimtza mishu kasher. So a person who's saying holy songs, starts his drawing from the source of the two holy birds. And I'll just end with this, and then we'll begin from here tomorrow. If you think about it, I'll peep shat ma kesher. Right? Okay, so fine. So he used his voice to say lashon hara. But how do you get from there that the two holy birds that are coming to be masak in that is negina to kedusha, ma kesher negina to kedusha to lashon hara? Lashon hara is not negina to sitra achra. It's not music that then is reflected in holy music because the birds come and be matar. And I was thinking about this over Shabbos, and it occurred to me, it mamish is negina. Because in Torah Reish Pei Beis, the most famous teaching, Likutei Moharan, Rebbe Nachman says that Azamar Lelikai Ba'oidi, how do you make a song for HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Ba'oid, you find the good point in every single person. You collect the good points together, it makes a nigun. What's Lashon Hara? Is you're finding the bad points in everybody. So Lashon Hara is mamish, the klip of Negina de Kedusha. If the Shtei Tzipar and Chayis Tires are coming to fix Lashon Hara, must be that Negina de Kedusha comes from there. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should mamish give us strength to hold on, to center our lives around this. This should be the essence of our whole life. life, the essence of our whole day. Every other Torah we learn should be filtered through this. This is the R of the Geulah that we're zeicha to sit with and absorb and inhale. This is mamish why we're here in this world at this moment in history. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give us the strength to feel that, to believe that, to lean into that, to feel that gratitude, to feel the mission to spread that, to recognize that we need every Yid activated, and we're all part of an algorithm. We are all one. We are all Him. And Be'ezras Hashem, through that, we're going to be zeicha to bring the world closer and closer. Kadcham gabei sapach. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should turn around, panei elai, and Yar Hashem panav elecha. He should shine His face to us. Bekar of mamish, take it from Yad. Be'ezras Hashem, thank you so much. Thank you to everybody who joined us on the call. Thank you. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Ani habe ואתה האב שלי שכל כך אוהב אותי האב שלי מלך חי וקיים על כל נשימה שאני